So, hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today at Secular AZ. We are a nonprofit organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state for over a decade. We've had some amazing programming, including our Friday noon updates from all kinds of incredible speakers. We've had historians, authors, elected officials, journalists, etc. Next Friday, we're actually going to be wrapping up this series about criminal justice, and we're going to hear from Chris Phyllis about juvenile justice in Arizona. After that, we're putting together another series about abuse happening in some religious organizations. We'll also be hearing from more progressive religious leaders who disagree with the kind of culture wars that are going on. So if you have a story to tell about your experience, you can reach out to us at info@secularaz.org. Also, it's a very busy time of year for us. The American Atheist Convention is happening in Phoenix from April 7th to 9th, and our day near the Capitol is happening the following Monday on April 10th. So be sure to sign up to attend, and I hope that you will all support the work that we do here at Secular AZ. Hopefully you'll become a recurring donor to support our work at the legislature, at school boards, with our action alerts, etc. Today, I'm really happy to be speaking with an old friend of mine. Our sons grew up together in very similar settings, but their paths couldn't be more different. My friend Jess is the parent of an incarcerated person, Alex. She cares deeply about social issues and finding ways to improve the lives of incarcerated people and their loved ones. Jess has been an Arizona resident for her entire adult life, has a BFA from Northern Arizona University, and works as a software engineer. So I really appreciate you being willing to speak with us today about such a personal topic. Is there anything that you'd like to add to your bio?
No, you've got it.
Okay, good.
Good.
I just want to start off today by talking about Alex. Jess and I were talking earlier, and I remember Alex being one of the most insightful, whip-smart kids I've ever met. So let's just kind of start off by singing his praises and remembering his humanity, because too often incarcerated people are reduced to their crimes. And I want to talk about all the great things about Alex. So if you want to just share a little bit about Alex.
Absolutely. Actually, if I can just start doing my slides, I have a bunch of that stuff in here.
Sure. Yeah.
We can just
go ahead.
Go do that. Let me set up my little slideshow here. Okay. Desktop. No, that's not the right. There's the right one. Here we go. Okay. So let me back up. On the wrong slide here. Okay. So a big part of what I'm talking about is the deeper costs of incarceration that are bigger than what you know about when you aren't a family member of someone who's incarcerated. So I'm Jess, as Jeannie said. I'm going to talk to you about Alex, my son, and I'm going to tell you about who we are and our day-to-day lives, how this affects us, and what it costs us and what it costs the community. And then I'd like to open it up to any questions, and really feel free to just ask whatever you want, share whatever you want. We could talk about this organically. If something is too much for me, I'll let you know. There's a good chance I'm going to cry during this, and that's okay. I cry all the time, and that's pretty healthy, I think. So who we are. Alex is smart, funny, clever, compassionate. When he was small, he stood up to bullies. He once got into an argument with another child over the ethics of stumping on bugs, and he was absolutely horrified that anyone would, and that her mother wouldn't make her stop. Growing up, you would often find him in a tree with a book. He loved to read, he loved to write. He was just insightful and amazing, and he still is in many ways. He struggled with mental illness. We reached out to his school, we reached out to counselors, we reached out to mental health professionals, and we received no support. As he got older, that was rough. We would see him turn to substances. When he became an adult all the way at 18, he got the seriously mentally ill legal designation. He was in and out of psych hospitals from the time he was 15. And several years ago, during a mental health episode, he was arrested. He attended mental health court. His sentence included court-ordered mental health care. And during the months he was on court-ordered care, he did not need inpatient care and had no episodes. I think it's really important to talk about the fact that sometimes they do things right? Like that time, things went right for Alex. and he was improving and he was growing and he was learning and becoming an adult. And then the order expired and his condition deteriorated. He had inpatient stays. He was homeless. He survived several drug overdoses. Honestly, he's so incredibly resilient. It's hard to even believe that we still have him here with us, and we're very lucky. 2 years ago, he had a serious mental health episode. He did not hurt the police, but they shot him in the chest and the arm. They provided us false information. We believed it was him based on the news, but when we called the police, they told us they had told his mother and that it couldn't possibly be our child. So we weren't able to see him in the hospital. He was arrested and removed to the county jail one day after surgery. I want to be really clear here. Because of the mentally ill designation, the state knew exactly what was going on with Alex. They knew how to manage it appropriately and successfully and did it once, and then they chose not to continue. When I finally found out it was him, it was the day after his surgery, and a reporter let me know that it was my child. His bill was $100,000. We were not able to afford that. By the way, if you do have to post bail and you don't have all of that money, you give up 10% of whatever that is. So that's $10,000 that you would never get back. You don't get it back when they go to court. You just spend it. It's just gone. He was offered a plea of 10 years. He was threatened with a significantly worse plea if he didn't accept the offer and told that he would lose at trial and get more time. So he decided to accept the plea and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. One piece about this that I think is really important, having sat in court many times with Alex, with other people, and seeing what happens for some of us. Alex is mentally ill, has no assets or income, and is non-religious, and is sitting there looking like a criminal. He is literally dressed as a criminal. How could he possibly succeed? And then we see this guy over here that we know hurt kids. He told us. We know he took pictures and has pictures of kids that were being hurt. He was convicted, but this is him going to court. This is how he gets to present with his family holding his hand, with his loved one. He is polished. That's the difference between people who have assets and people who don't. People who are Christian and people who are not. People who are famous and people who are not. So I'm going to talk about our day-to-day. I can describe what I live and what I think I know about Alex, but I can't speak from experience. Alex often softens details to make them easier for me to handle. This is a recent message from him. Hey, Mom, so far I've kept many things from you. I may sound okay, but I am teetering on the edge. I will do my best to advocate for myself and reach out to mental health. My words will most likely fall on deaf ears. These people simply do not care. So he's been moved around to multiple prisons and is currently incarcerated in Central Arizona. He is in isolation and has been in isolation for months. His visitation privileges have been suspended indefinitely. We're told that we may review this in January of 2025. His phone privileges are also currently suspended with no end date that I know of. He has access to a tablet with email and a few books, and that's cool. Those tablets are amazing. I'm really glad that they've done that for the people who are incarcerated. It's a great thing. And in various jurisdictions, the charges are different. For where he's at right now, he is not charged to just like access like the news, I guess, and some books. And then he also has actual paper books that I'm allowed to send him. So that's a cool thing they do. In other places, like when he was in Maricopa County Jail, it cost him by the minute to use the tablet. Email does cost, which we'll cover later. He has a TV. The screen was broken by a guard. They won't replace it. He's not allowed to order new stuff because he's in trouble. So he just has a broken TV. Right now he has enough to eat because he is not on, like, there's different levels of privileges, and he currently is allowed to order from store, which means that he is allowed to order that extra food. When he was on loss of privileges that prevented him from ordering store, he was hungry all the time. He said that many of his peers who don't have money, whose families don't have money, are hungry all the time. Once a week, he is allowed to attend a class. About 3 times a week, he can go to the rec cages, which are outside. They are cages. He mostly chooses to stay in his cell because he told me that he doesn't really want to talk to people that much anymore. I don't know what to do with this. He doesn't seem okay. Like, he seems depressed. I'm afraid he's going to hurt himself. He's in isolation all the time. His activities and contact with other people is limited so extremely that there's no way that he's not experiencing increasing psychological damage. He's just not okay. And there's nothing we can do. In prison, this is a picture of an Arizona prison. This is also, they have this cage. If you follow the news or have attended some of these earlier talks, you might be aware of this, but I just want to make sure that everyone understands. On the left is the cage photo. It can be used when someone is in crisis, self-harming, that kind of thing. We've seen a video of guards pepper spraying incarcerated people in crisis while held in these cages to ostensibly prevent them from hurting themselves. I don't really see how that would work. So this is a cage where they are put, where they are hurting or being hurt. And then it is also the cage that they use for counseling and therapy. So incarcerated people are locked in during sessions with mental health counselors and kept in restraints in the cage while they do counseling. So, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has had some trauma to resolve, but I do. And if I had to sit in a cage in handcuffs, it wouldn't work. I just simply couldn't do it. I don't know how any of them can. I'm told that many inmates just don't go. They just refuse because it's too awful. On the right side, we have a picture of the recreation. Now, people held in isolation are often not given any recreation time. When they are, this shows where they go. There is a metal grate over the top, and this is the only time that they get fresh air, see the outdoors. This is the only time that my tree climbing Arizona sunshine kid gets to see the sun. And a lot of times he chooses not to go. Our family's experience is essentially constant low-level terror. We don't know what's going to happen. People die in these prisons all the time. They're mistreated. Their healthcare is horrible. I mean, we know that everybody thinks it's funny to make jokes about prison rape, but that really happens. It really happens to real people who are really there. It's just terrifying. And that affects my health. It affects my work. It affects my ability to advocate for him. It affects the rest of my family. It affects my sister. It affects his friends. It affects his uncle. It affects everyone who cares about him. And this grief is kind of ever present and unresolvable. It's not like he's gone and we choose to move on. He's removed from us and unsafe every minute of every day. Our contact is limited to emails. I try to stay informed on the law. The policies of the DOC are constantly fluctuating, and I want to help him, and I don't know how. And at the same time, I get overwhelmed and then I can't do anything because it's all terrifying. When he does reach out and ask for something specific, I stop what I'm doing. Luckily, my employer is incredibly understanding. I try to help him resolve that. Most of the time when I reach out, my emails and voicemails just aren't answered. Sometimes they pick up the phone and they tell me to call someone else, and then that's a voicemail and that goes unanswered. And then on top of that, Alex doesn't always have a great deal of insight into his own illness, into what's important, into how to share appropriately. He just isn't quite well enough to really get everything all the time in a real world way. And so we don't always know what's going on. We just don't know. It could be much worse than we know because he doesn't tell us. And he's told us that he doesn't tell us everything anyway. So these things all cost. They cost money, they cost time, they cost peace, they cost everything. And from a monetary standpoint, 90% of incarcerated people in Arizona make 10 to 50 cents an hour. The majority of families of incarcerated people are economically disadvantaged. Our family happens to be very lucky that I got a very good job when Alex moved out, and I'm able to help him monetarily in lots of ways. He is unable to work. He's never had a job. I think he would need a lot of therapy and help to get a job. So here's some of the costs. Food costs. Hygiene costs. They will give them toothbrushes, but they're like weird little fake toothbrushes that break down and don't really work. and all of those other products are just kind of bad, so he needs to buy those. They buy their own shoes. They pay for email, they pay for phone, they pay for fines and fees, and the families pay for all of these things as well. The companies involved include, and this is probably not a total list, GTL, Securus, JPay, Connect Network, Telmate, TouchPay, and Access Secure Pack. Email costs 22 to 25 cents per stamp. There's a stamp required for each email and a stamp required for each photo attachment. You can only attach a couple of photos to each email, which overall increases the cost if you wanted to send a lot of photos. Phone calls are 12 to 21 cents per minute and are limited to 20 minutes. And let me tell you, that lady coming on the line and saying you have 1 minute left is the worst sound in the world. It's awful. But on the upside, connection fees per call appear to have been totally eliminated recently. So that's really cool. That was causing a lot of problems. If Alex wanted to talk longer than 20 minutes, he would call again, and that would be like a $4 fee and then another $4 fee on top of the minutes. So they've removed that, and that's pretty cool. Food. So the food in the prisons is real bad. A lot of the food comes in boxes that are labeled not appropriate for human consumption. Like, I'm not kidding, that's a real thing. There's not enough either. They're hungry all the time. And then the food that's available for purchase is typically junk food. It's very high in sugar and sodium, low in nutritional value, and the cost of food is typically higher than public pricing. So it's just a sampling here. Red beans and rice for the public is $1.09. For the prison, it's $1.35. Ramen is 30 cents. Prison, it's more than twice that. Cookies are $1. Prison, it's almost twice that. Cupcakes are $3.50. Prison, it's $5.75. So we're talking about people who make 10 to 50 cents an hour and families who typically are right on the edge. Families who are getting services, families who can't afford to do this. And so think about that, like your son or your daughter or your sister or your mom calls you and says, hey, I need some stamps for my email and I really need a food box. I'm out and I'm hungry all the time. And you have to say, I have to pay the rent and I don't have that money. You have to tell them no to food. How do you do it? I don't know. I don't know how anyone handles this who doesn't have some resources to help them. It's already so heartbreaking. Fines and fees are pretty excessive. It costs $25 to apply to be able to call or visit an incarcerated person. People incarcerated in Arizona prisons can be fined hundreds of dollars for infractions. Alex has a current fine of, I think it's $600 are left. And they just take chunks every time I put money on his books. The fees on every transaction are absolutely exploitative. $5.95 for a $50 deposit. That's absurd. The systems in place, as I listed all of those different companies, are needlessly complicated. They involve all kinds of companies. They change all the time. If the company changes, you don't know the company changed and you only get 30 days to get a refund and they've got your $50 and then you don't have your $50 anymore. The forms are confusing and misleading. Understand, I am a software engineer. This morning, I went to take this screenshot and I wasn't going to make a deposit. I didn't press finish, but my card was charged. If you use a credit card, you incur a cash advance fee, like $10 plus the higher interest on a regular credit card. It's beyond absurd all the ways that families and incarcerated people are just charged over and over and over again for things that should just be normal. And then there's the human cost. When your food is not adequate, when your access to fresh air and sunshine is limited, when you don't have opportunities for physical activity, when you don't touch or speak to people, when no one who cares about you touches you for months or years, when you have limited access to healthcare or programs, when you're alone all the time, families and loved ones and the people who are incarcerated experience extreme stress and money problems, and we expect these people to grow and learn. We expect them to find their way to doing the right thing in society, and this is how we treat them. And that costs all of us. In a monetary way, it costs over $1.5 billion just for Arizona. That's just us, one state. These poor conditions that lead to negative health and behavior outcomes increase monetary costs on taxpayers both during and after incarceration. Most incarcerated people serve their time and leave prison. They rejoin us. The ongoing costs in human lifetime and money are tremendous. There are neighbors. Alex is going to get out, hopefully, and come and live with me. And he's going to live next door to some of you. And he's going to go to the store with some of you and all the people in our society. And we want him to be okay, right? Like, we want him to find a job and pay taxes and be peaceful and kind. And everything that's happening to him right now is making that a harder thing to happen. I don't know that he'll ever be okay. He wasn't great when he went in. So that's kind of what I've got.
Yeah, I should have been taking notes, but I was just really listening. And so, like, there were a few things there that just, they just really boggle the mind, right? Like, the fact that there's such a markup on food and the food is just terrible to begin with. I remember I have another friend, Joyce, who's actually here today. And her son was incarcerated a while back. And I remember her telling me stories about going to visit her son and how like there would be a day where she could like load up a cooler or whatever and like bring stuff. And I remember the way that the guards would treat her, the way that they would search things. Like, here's this day where they're just like really looking forward to seeing each other. And like, she's going to bring him like things that are like comfort food. But even that was like very strictly managed, you know, like you couldn't, I don't remember exactly what the details were. And if you want to pipe in, Joyce, feel free to, but like just how inhumane it was, you know, like she would show up. I remember her telling a story of showing up with like all the things that her son really loved, and then having the guards like just be so condescending and awful to her, and then essentially just, you know, like canceling the whole entire visit to a place that's, you know, it's not in the neighborhood. She would have to drive, I think it was like to Florence or whatever. She's saying right now, they refused to let me visit because there was metal in the wheels of the cooler. You know, like whatever little thing that they could do to just kind of further strip her and her son of their humanity, you know. And now with you, when you told me that and they were laughing, she says, that's terrible. So when you told me that he's not allowed to you can't even apply for him to have visitors until 2025. Like, you know, so let's talk a little bit about the fact that I'm sorry, I've just got so many questions and I'm all over the place, but like,
That's great.
Does he get the mental health care that he needs in prison?
He says that he gets the meds that he needs and that they're working, but he hasn't told me what they are. And I can tell through my interactions with him. Thing is he's so articulate and so smart and so insightful. And then every once in a while, I will get an email that is just like, not okay. Like, you know your family, you know when they're okay. And sometimes he's just not. And it's very clear that he's having a mental health episode, that something else is going on, or that he's high. And he has tickets for doing drugs. And those are the reasons why he's not allowed to have visitation. But he's never had a visitor, not one time. The entire time he's been there, he's never had a visitor. So how did he get drugs, and why would preventing visitation prevent that? Right?
I mean, I think we all know, and we've talked about this over the last several weeks, like we all know how the drugs get into the prison, and nothing's really done about it. And the whole system of people employed in these prisons. I mean, we talked about how high the turnover is too. Like, it's just ripe with corruption and illegal activities. I do want to point out that Ron, I love this. So I don't know if you're looking at the comments, but Ron says that he would like to offer the following. He is an AHA humanist chaplain. So I'm guessing that's the American Humanist Society or American Humanist Association. And he says he'd like to visit with you and then Alex to see how we can leverage his status as a religious chaplain to the benefit of Alex and Jess. In addition, there is an inmate program at Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix that provides him some benefits, and Humanist Society sponsors the cost. So would Alex be a humanist or humanist curious so that he could get that whenever he's allowed to actually see people again?
Absolutely. I think when he went in, he identified as a staunch atheist. At this point, he's exploring like earth-based religions and things like that. And I think really what he's trying to do is find some meaning and some way to move forward in this time and get through it. And that's okay, like whatever he needs to do. I think on paperwork, he's listed as Wiccan, but he absolutely would welcome any kind of non-religious insight. That is right up what he would be interested in. And I really appreciate that offer.
Yeah, so Ron, if you want to share and you don't have to share it with everybody in attendance today, but if you want to share it with the host and panelists, you can go ahead and do that. And then that way, you can connect with Jess and with Alex at some point. Keith says that the specificity of your presentation is powerful. Most speakers talk in vague terms about the inhumanity of the prison system. You have examples to show what incremental cruelty looks like. I think Frida Kahlo used the image 1,000 little cuts. Yeah. So let's see if there's anything else. Thank you for sharing, Jess. My heart goes out to you and Alex. Somehow we have to keep as many people out of prison as possible. And then Brandy says cruelty is the point, which I feel like we're just discovering every single day, whether you're in Arizona or you're in Kentucky or in Florida, the cruelty does seem to be the point. All right, good. Yes. So Ron
from Keith. Have I ever given this presentation to anyone else? No, this is my first time giving this. And I really appreciate the opportunity from Jeannie. 6 months ago, a year ago, I don't know that I could have done it. It's very strange in that it becomes a normal and that it's never ever normal, but it sort of becomes normal that it's never normal. And I've gotten to the point where I can speak about it and not collapse. It definitely was a long time when I just wasn't able to talk about it at all. But I would absolutely be open to talking about this more. And I spoke with Alex about this and said, if this ever gets back to you and connects to you, it could put you at risk. You know that, I know that. Is it okay? And he said, Mom, tell my story. Tell everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I was reluctant in reaching out to you because I know of your journey. And I know of the first time that he, got into the court system. And it at that point, oops, sorry, my earbuds just popped out because I'm animated and I am not Italian, but I speak with Italian hands apparently. But I remember we all wrote letters on Alex's behalf the first time that he got, in the court system. And it really seemed like we were all just like, yes, okay, it sucks, but This is what he's needed, because he was such a gifted child that the schools didn't really know how to handle him. Right. So he was because that whole intersectionality of giftedness and mental illness, we see it all the time with artists and musicians and stuff like that. And so that time when the court mandated that he would get the medication that he needed to be okay, we're all like, okay, good. Right. We can breathe a sigh of relief. So can you talk maybe a little bit about how it was so successful, and then what happened? How did he fall off of
Yeah, there's a few pieces of that. And one of them is that there's all this stuff about how 50 years ago, mental illness was treated by like shoving people in a closet and shutting the door and mistreating them. And that was it, right? And so the response was to open every closet and every place that everyone ever was mentally ill and cared for and say, go. So now there really isn't a lot in place for anyone. Obviously, we don't want to go back to where we were hurting people and imprisoning them without good reason and not taking good care of them, but there isn't much now. So he was put on this thing where he had to go get his meds. It was a shot. He couldn't cheek them. He couldn't do anything to not get them. He had to get them or they were going to pick him up and put him back in jail. So he got them and he was successful. Like, I'm not saying he was perfect, but he absolutely didn't have any episodes. He didn't have any psych intake at that time. Like it was such a great time. And we kept like waiting, like, when's the other shoe going to drop? And we're like, wow, like this worked. Like he's doing all right. That's pretty great. And then the order expired and he didn't have to do it. And so he went off. And then as people do who don't often have a lot of insight into their illness, he made other choices, which generally meant turning to alcohol and drugs. And that was a product of the environment that he was in. He was not living with me. And that's for several reasons. One of them is that when Alex is really struggling, that he's not a very safe person to be around. And so that's why we need him to get treatment, right? Like, because when he is treated and when he is okay, he's the most fun, most interesting, most insightful, awesome person to be around, right? So he was in a bad environment. He was making a lot of bad choices and he had this break happen and was shot and arrested. And what happens when the police shoot is that they have to justify it, right? They can't just shoot somebody and be like, wait, he didn't have a gun. Oops, sorry. So when you act in such a way that a police officer is scared of you enough to shoot you, they charge you with assault on a police officer. So that meant that he had 2 charges of assault on a police officer, which is a very, very, very serious thing. In Arizona, we have minimum time requirements that are pushed by one individual and have been for like the past 40 years. It's very bizarre when you start looking into it, and it's something that we should change. I don't know that it would change in time to help Alex, but it could change for somebody. That it's wrong that it's this way, because clearly this kid doesn't belong in prison for 10 years. It's not doing him or us any good. So we have those mandatory minimums. We have this whole situation where he had a previous infraction, and that meant that he had to go to prison as if he took the plea. If he didn't take the plea, he could have gotten something like 24 to 40 years. I understand why he chose to take the plea.
Well, and we also know, I mean, like, I have a few good friends who are public defenders who have just stacks and stacks of cases that are completely unmanageable, right? Yeah. And, you know, and they're basically trained, right, to get people to take the plea, because if we were to actually seek real justice in any of these cases, it would be 10 years before the case was even in front of a judge.
Yeah.
And they don't like it any better than we do, right? Like right. The public defenders that I know would love to have more resources, more staff, better pay, etc. But like, again, the systems have been designed and like your Josh Dugar picture just, you know, illustrates that perfectly. You know, here you've got a pedophile at a time when we're, you know, banning drag shows. I find it disgusting that, you know, like they're targeting like people in the LGBTQ community. And meanwhile, it's always the religious zealots who tend to be the ones who are the abusers. But like the fact that he and Harvey Weinstein and, you know, Woody Allen, whoever, I don't know, you know, like all these people have that unfair advantage of being able to dress in a suit and tie.
They can afford bail. They can go home to their families. They can eat good food. When Alex was in the Maricopa County Jail, he had a tooth pulled because they hadn't treated it in time to be able to fill the cavity. And I asked him, okay, did they tell you the things? I've had teeth pulled, I had my wisdom teeth out, I know all the things. No, they gave him gauze and sent him back to his cell. So I'm like, okay, here's a whole list of things that you need to do when you have a giant bleeding cavity and stitches in your mouth that no one told him. And we see that over and over again with people who have submitted paperwork to the state saying, I am dying of medical neglect, and they have died before the paperwork was processed. There are people who have had injuries that were fairly simple injuries that resulted in lifetime disability because Arizona doesn't take care of the prisoners, and then these things compound and become horrific problems. So,
And I think, I don't remember if it was, I think it may have been Jimmy Jenkins from the Arizona Republic who shared some of that. I can't remember. We've had so many great speakers, but
yeah,
I was really, I mean, like, I don't expect the medical care to be great in prison, right? But like to be that neglectful and almost like willfully like, it doesn't matter. And
right.
and I think that's the thing, like, you know, I know in the lead up to the 2022 election, what do we hear about? Crime, right? I
Right.
mean, I myself was a candidate in the 2022 election, and I was targeted for being soft on crime, but
Mhm.
November 9th hit and we haven't heard anything about crime. So it's just like one of those gross strategies to paint somebody as the other, or to, you know, just dehumanize them in every way. I want to catch up with some of these, make sure too that you get Ron's email,
Yeah,
because
I've copied it.
make sure that you do that. Joyce, my friend, said, Joyce, who's one of the most amazing teachers on the planet, she says her son was secretive with her while he was incarcerated and he came out of prison a different person. He definitely did.
Yeah.
Greg is asking, how do we know if this treatment of inmates violates any rules established by the state or feds? I'm sure guidelines exist. So are the cages and recreation room and all the other things presented compliant with such rules?
We know that the medical stuff is absolutely not compliant. There has been, for anyone who doesn't know, real quick, there's been a lawsuit against the state since 2012. They've lost twice now. The prison system has lost twice now and been told to shape up, and nothing has changed. So I'm not really sure what's different now, except that we do have a much better director right now, who is absolutely amazing. If you do a search for the new guy for the Arizona prisons, it's absolutely great, the stuff that he's telling us about. As far as the other stuff, the thing that I find really difficult to take is that I believe that most of this has been said that it's constitutional, that it's constitutional to take visits, it's constitutional to take phones. They are not allowed to take their mail, their physical mail. It's constitutional to keep them alone, that they don't have to see the sky. They have to be allowed to see the sky like a certain number of hours a week. But if they don't have if they don't have enough people to do that, to take them, you know, when someone's in isolation, they have to back up to the door, get all chained up, and then 1 or 2 guards has to escort them wherever they're going, stay with them the whole time, et cetera, and then bring them back. So it's a whole production. If they don't have the people for it, they just don't do it. And you can say, sure, it's not constitutional, it's not following their rights, but what are you going to do? Like, you can't make them do it. There's not enough people. We literally don't have enough people who are working there. And it's hard as a person who is absolutely for abolition and completely revamping the way that we treat people in the justice system, which is something that I cared about long before this happened to Alex, but has become obviously much more personal. We need more guards. We need more prison guards, and they need to be trained. They need to be kind, and they need to be good. And we need a lot of them, because we have all of these people that simply don't get to go outside or take a shower or go to counseling.
Yeah, it's and it makes me think too, as a teacher, you know, with a background in K-12 education, I still remember as a baby teacher, somebody telling me, like, don't let them see you smile until Thanksgiving. Like, you want to have this whole, like, you know, whatever. And I was like, well, that's a garbage take, because I won't respond to a teacher who doesn't smile and seems to only be there to, enforce the rules or whatever. And, I remember having trainings about hugging kids, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I have to do a side hug because, whatever, I'm not allowed to like actually try to treat these children as if they're my own. And I think that we need a whole, like, I remember I just heard something a couple weeks ago on This American Life on NPR, and it was some like military police officer talking about, or no, it wasn't This American Life, it was the Moth Radio Hour. And he was talking about how he used to be the biggest, baddest guard in the prison. And like one day they just decided to like actually, well, something terrible happened. And then he changed his whole philosophy and started saying little things like please and thank you, and remembering the humanity of the people who were imprisoned under his watch. And it changed everything. I do have a few questions here. Let's see. So Keith is saying, look at what happened to Elijah in Aurora, Colorado. That was horrible, who died at the hands of police and EMTs for walking while Black with a mask. I remember this one because he was, I think, on the autism spectrum, and he said, I'm different, I'm just different. And he ended up dying at the hands of police. So mental illness is an issue. Keith says also, we've forgotten that incarceration once included rehabilitation. It's now tailored for the revolving door. I mean, truly, we've monetized human beings. We just talked about that last week with John Dacey and the, what is it called? And private, whatever it is. I'm sure Lindsay will put up the links because she's really good at that. So there's a question though from Sandra. She asks, is your son physically a real threat to the guards?
I can't actually answer that. Alex is fairly strong, but he's not huge, at least the last time I saw him, but I haven't seen him since 2020. So I don't know. I know that this is how they treat everyone. That's how they treat people in wheelchairs. That's how they treat people who are in casts. How, I mean, it's literally how they treat every single person in isolation. And you might be in isolation like Alex because you have tickets, or you might be in isolation because you're in danger from the other inmates, or, there's a lot of reasons to be in isolation. So the idea that they treat everyone exactly the same is pretty absurd. And he certainly wasn't a danger when he was properly medicated and treated like a person.
Mm-hmm. And again, like, just, thinking about your journey over the years we have literally known each other for as long as our kids have been alive pretty much. And like, just thinking about, him over the years and how, if he had just gotten the base, like, just like in school, I remember you being like, gosh, I don't know, every day I'm getting a call about Alex and his behavior and whatever. And like, it just, illustrates and amplifies the need for fully funded schools that are not just, despite what Tom Horn says, we actually do need some social emotional learning, and social workers are probably better for our kids than SROs. And, had he gotten all the things that he needed, especially for you as a single mother struggling to just make ends meet, he could have had a very different outcome. Beth has a question. Has Alex been in both private and government run prisons? And if so, has he seen any difference?
He's only been in public prisons. As far as I know, the private prisons get people from like Hawaii and Alaska and stuff like that. I don't think Arizona inmates go into private prison, but I could be wrong about that. Alex has not. He's been in public the whole time.
Yeah, that would have been a good question to ask John Dacey last week when he was talking, because I was shocked too about the fact that, Arizona is housing prisoners. Sorry, let's just call them residents, because I really like that, the new director of whatever he is, I can't remember, but
they
Thornell
changed the name like a week ago. So I can't remember.
Yeah. So as a resident instead of inmate, because I would rather not further stigmatize, Let's see. Okay, so all right, no more questions there. So if you do have any questions, oh, look, there's one in the Q&A. Hold on, let me check.
Mhm.
Diane says Arizona does put Arizona prisons into for-profit prisons in Arizona. So there's what she's saying is there are Arizona prisoners in our private prisons.
Thank you for letting us know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I also want you to have an opportunity, because one of the things that we talked about, I think, with Joseph Joffrey a couple weeks ago about, because he was talking about labor in prisons, but he also mentioned how important, like, if you want to do something, because for all of us, we feel a little bit helpless. We're not walking in your shoes, but we can empathize, even though apparently empathy is like a bad thing nowadays with some right wingers, which I
So
just
we're
find
told.
so weird, right? But like, we all empathize. And so I actually started, I just went to the link that Joseph provided us with and started emailing a prisoner, a resident at one of our prisons here in Arizona. It's been an interesting conversation. He's the prisoner that I reached out to actually went dark, and then I just started worrying, like, oh my gosh, did I somehow, like, because I know that things are being read, but I tried to just be very like here, but I haven't heard from him in 2 weeks now, since whenever that conversation was. But is there, I know that putting money on books is important, that having, even though we can't have a physical connection with people, perhaps there are people out there who might like to email Alex and really learn more about him and just support him. So if you feel comfortable with it, feel free to share those tidbits, and the folks who are on this call might decide to email him or put money on his books or whatever. So you can go ahead and do that if you feel comfortable with it.
I think what I would prefer is if anybody is interested in doing anything like that, reach out to me and I will connect with you privately. And that way, I don't really want to put his DOC number just like right out in everything.
Totally understood. Yeah, like I said, I was worried from the get-go about this conversation, just because I didn't want Alex to have a target on his back,
Right.
So whatever you feel comfortable sharing, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you don't have to. So what happens then? You said January 23rd is when you can apply for him to have visitors again. What is that process like? Do you even know?
I have no idea. And that's part of what's so difficult about this, is that you don't know and no one tells you anything. So you hop on Facebook and you go find a group of, Arizona prison moms, and you ask a million questions, and then 99% of them pray for you and don't have any answers. But somebody tells you, somebody says it'll take them a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks to get through the first intake and you won't hear a word. Don't be worried. They're okay. And you can keep looking them up on the thing and see what their status is, right? So you have like no information, and there's all these ways that you can misstep, right? Like someone said, they had emailed and included a Facebook screenshot and their email was returned to them. They weren't allowed to send that Facebook screenshot because who knows why, no one tells them. And then, like I think Joyce said about metal in the wheels, like you don't know these things, right? So you make missteps because you simply don't know what the rules are. No one tells you. I've read most of the documentation on the website before it changed, but the website has now changed and I guess I need to start again. There's a bunch of new documentation and I will read that. I don't know if we will ever get visitation for him. One point about his tickets is that, yes, he is mentally ill. Yes, he acts out physically at times. That's pretty rare unless someone starts things with him. He's a pretty compassionate person and doesn't like start things, right? But he's pretty easy to get going if you'd like to.
He's the defender of, I remember him being like the defender of injustice. Like,
yes,
if there was injustice,
like me in that.
Yes.
Yeah. So the thing with his tickets is he gets tickets that say either, and it doesn't specify which, he failed or refused to produce a test.
Mhm.
He's mentally ill, and one of the issues he has is anxiety. He simply cannot. He can't. You can ask him 1,000 times. He can't. He can have drunk 8 Cokes and be in agony, and he can't go in front of you. He just can't. So he gets tickets and can't get visitors because he's anxious. I mean, it's like beyond understanding. Like, he's going to get less anxious because he never gets to see anybody who loves him. It's just beyond anything that seems reasonable at all.
Again, the cruelty does seem to be the point with the folks that, put the, or at least, put these laws into place or continue these practices. And yeah, like for even just tracking legislation in Arizona, the answer on the right always seems to be more time, more incarceration. Here's another thing that you could be found guilty of in Arizona. There's really, so does he have an opportunity ever to like take a class, learn a skill?
He has like a mental health class, but like I said, they put them in the cages for that. And he has started to choose to opt out of those things, which is really scary for me, right? Like, can you imagine? Like you're alone in a room all day, and leaving that room is so uncomfortable and scary that you choose to stay and never leave a tiny little room the size of a big bathroom. It's very scary for me to think of where he's at. And every once in a while, when I get one of those emails when he says, I'm right on the edge, Mom. Are we going to get him back? I hope so.
I hope so too.
But I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's and it shouldn't take knowing someone who's incarcerated for all of us to care and feel compassion about the situation. And I think that is, by design, right? Like, because who are the most incarcerated people in the state and in the country? Well, typically they're marginalized folks in one way or another, whether they're people of color, people who are suffering mental illness, people who are poor, whatever. And I had, like I was saying in the very beginning, I've always worked in Title I schools, and I've had, unfortunately, many students or parents of students who are incarcerated. I still remember a student of mine, Izzy, who was his mother, when I first met him, had just recently gone into prison and was going to be there for quite a while. And like, here's a kid who he's lost his mother. His father, he's a gay kid, so like his dad didn't like him very much and wasn't very kind to him, and for him to even try, like, I tried to help this kid navigate through the system because he didn't have a guardian, a parent, anybody who would like kind of help him get in to see his mom. And just thinking about that and thinking about the generational effects of incarceration. It shouldn't take for us to know somebody personally for us to feel empathy and compassion for folks who are going through this.
Part of that is like, yes, you can care, but until you're like in it, you just don't know a lot of it. It looks bad from the outside, but how bad could it really be? There's not really mice and roaches in their cells, right? No, there really are. There's not really mold on their food, right? No, there really is. Like, you don't know. So until you're very personally connected and you start talking to people who've actually been there, you just don't know how bad it is. And that's intentional. So I think talking about this and making sure that everyone knows is important. And also, they're going to be our neighbors, whether we want them or not. Whether we want to spend this money or not, we're going to spend it. So why don't we do it? Even if we're completely selfish and we don't care about people like Alex, why don't we spend in a way that builds our communities? They're going to live with us. Let's make them people we want to live next to. Like, let's do this right.
It's a no-brainer, really. I remember hearing a long time ago, now this time it was on This American Life, the podcast, but it was about a prison, I think in Louisiana, that started doing Shakespeare. And like, these are incarcerated individuals who, many of them are in there for life. but there was somebody, I don't know if there was a grant involved, but there was a professor who started teaching Shakespeare, and the like, there's so many opportunities. Like, here we use incarcerated individuals to put out fires, but then when they get out, they can't actually apply for that job. Like, why?
With a
Like,
felony, they're not allowed to. They're literally not allowed to.
and there needs to be a movement that ban the box was what it was called when I was doing research on this back in 2015. But that box that you have to check off saying you're a felon, and there were a whole bunch of municipalities who came out and were like, yeah, no, this doesn't make sense. Or the way, like, we just talked to, I can't remember her name, I think she was with the ACLU, but she talked about the cost savings of ankle bracelets instead of incarceration.
Yes. Give me my kid back. I will keep him in the house. I promise.
Yeah.
Like, swear it.
And it's just, I don't know. First of all, there's so many things wrong with the way that we do things. It's hard to even pick a lane to stay in.
Right.
Like,
it's kind of tremendously difficult on every level. And I think about, like, I believe firmly in decarceration and abolishment in the long run, because I think that we can find solutions that look nothing like what we have for the people who are really unsafe. And sometimes Alex is one of those people, but we know how to fix that. So let's go back to doing that. Let's help everybody that we can help. But then there's also what's today. So we have, like, Director Thornell is doing all of these cool things, and he's telling us about all the problems he's finding. And so today we need more guards. We need more books. We need more kindness. We need more humanity. We need better nutrition. We need sunshine and light. Like,
yeah, like, imagine
those things today.
the most basic things, right? Like, just denying somebody the ability to have visitors, have family, it's inhumane. So we are coming up on time, but I first of all, thank you, because
Absolutely.
I know it's a tough story and it's really hard, and I just really appreciate you. Diane, do you want to say something? Diane's our legal.
Oh, that was my mistake.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe she had something to add. I was like, let's hear pearls of wisdom. Let's go. But I it's such an important topic. Friday, I say this all the time. It's such a bummer topic too. So I think, I don't know, I don't want to insert words or anything, but for me, I feel like the hope is, if you want to connect with Alex and Jess, you can reach out to us at info@secularaz.com or .org, sorry. And but, like, where do you find hope throughout the day, Jess? And I know that maybe it involves Legos and video games.
It really kind of is all over the place. And you're right. There are days when I don't have any hope and I don't have anything to give. And I turn on an audiobook and I play a game, or I build a Lego and take myself away from it because I don't have anything. But then there are days when I read about what Director Thornell has to say, that I think that maybe we can make this better. And even if we don't make it better in time for Alex, somebody else has an Alex. Somebody else's boy is there, or their daughter, and they need to be okay. And they need, even when this is over for us, it's still going to be our neighbors and our people. And if we move forward with things like, calling them residents is huge, like huge. We can make a world where we take care of these people who are struggling and are our neighbors, and bring them back into the world, and we can all succeed together. And that's really beautiful.
Yeah. And that's something that I've admired about you over the last several months or years, or however long. Time is irrelevant these days with COVID, but, like, you always have that message, like, it might not make it better for Alex, but it might make it better for somebody else's kid down the road. So I just appreciate you. I'm so glad to see your face. We only interact via text message or on Twitter. So I'm super happy that you joined us today. And I just really, and as Greg says, Jess, thank you very much for coming today. I honor your bravery, and I do as well.
Thank you all so much for being here and listening and talking and sharing your ideas and your questions and your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. All right, everybody, with that, I hope you all have a great weekend. Take care.
Weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.